Buddy, how are you all? You good? How emotional are you all right now? I bet highly. I have to say hello to everybody who's watching live via Coldplay's Facebook page from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here in a lovely cinema in Soho in London, the Curzon Cinema in Soho in London, a wonderful cinema, with a group of people, friends and family who have just watched the film. There feels like there's a lot of emotion in the room after just watching that. And I know a lot of you who are watching are very excited to see the film tomorrow for one night only, as it's across thousands of cinemas all over the world. And if you aren't lucky enough to have a ticket, then fear not, because from Friday it will be streaming on Amazon Prime. Without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the director of the film. Please put your hands together for Mat Whitecross. Yeah! Matt's got a little bit of a croaky voice because he's been singing along to his film so much.
I've been shouting at my children.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It is a wonderful and beautiful film. I've been lucky enough to see it, and having been a fan of the band for so long, it really felt like you'd taken us on their journey. And I wanted to ask you, when you finally convinced them that they were going to make the film, did you think about a narrative? Did you think about what story you wanted to tell? Because obviously you've been a friend since the start, so you knew their story.
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard because, yeah, I mean, it's not like we could have told any version of it, and we could have told it in lots of different ways, and we weren't sure if, you know, on the last film we'd done, which was a film about Oasis, we just concentrated on the beginning, and even that resulted in a 7-hour cut. So on this, it's like 20 years. I don't know how you do it. And then the more we talked about it, it was like, okay, well, let's make it, give it a kind of fragmented, kind of just like it just would go from theme to theme. So we'll just go like, we'll have a bad times bit, and then we'll have another bit. And we went through a version of that, and we showed it to Phil. Phil was there as kind of the eyes and ears of the band initially. And I think it's the closest he came to pulling the plug. He was like, no, that's shit. You need to start again. So then we went off and kind of licked our wounds and kind of made the version that you see now. So it wasn't easy. But I think the main thing really was that it's a story of friendship and childhood friendship. And so I think at that point it was like, okay, if it's about love and friendship, then it really has to be about the four of them and Phil. And even though that's only one very small part of the story, really, there's so many people who have come later, and a lot of them in the room today are probably going to lynch me on the way out, because there's so many people who are crucial to Coldplay who are not in the film. But unfortunately, this was the version that I felt I wanted to tell.
Yeah. How did you convince them?
I'm not sure I still have. I think they might still pull the plug. I don't know. I mean, it was hard because, you know, even at uni, we talked about, like, what do we do with all this footage? And this was just as they got signed. I think I approached Johnny and maybe Chris and said, look, I've got all this stuff. Can I turn it into a film? Because I wanted to be a filmmaker and I wanted to kind of ride off their coattails. and Johnny was like, oh, we don't really have a story yet. It's like, don't worry about that. It's fine. I'm going to write a story. I'll make up a story and I'm going to pretend that's your story. I'm going to create a kind of Coldplay myth. And no one liked that idea. So we were like, okay, fine, we'll leave it. And then every year since then, more or less, they've asked me along, or other people. There's so many people who filmed them through the years, not least Miller. And I've been filming with Marcus this past couple of years and stuff. And so there's been a lot of people doing it. And every year I go, is it time? No. And it was really just, I think just on the back of Supersonic, maybe that Phil was like, okay, maybe it's time. And even then it was a little bit touch and go, because I think maybe there's something, certainly in Chris's mind, maybe in the rest of the band, it's like once you make that film, then maybe it's kind of time to hang up your hats and go home. But I really hope it isn't.
Yeah, me too. What do you think convinced them? What do you think, and why do you think now was the time that they were like, off the back of the success, this incredible tour as well, you kind of feel like it's not a door closing, but almost like a new chapter then could potentially be around the corner? Yeah,
I think it must be something along those lines. So I think, I mean, after every album, like Will says in the film, it's like, yeah, we always talk about this is the last one, because they kind of, and I completely understand that, because I you know, on when I'm working on a film, it's like you try and put everything into it. Like by the end, you're empty. You've got nothing else to say. That's it. I've said it all in that, and particularly with them because the albums are so personal. But then each time they've kind of found a reason to carry on, and I think, but particularly with this one, it felt like this was like the end of a chapter. It's the end of a book or something like that. It's like this is the culmination of those ideas that Chris was talking about before they'd even sat down to write together. And I have no idea what they're doing next. I know they're hatching something, but I just feel like whatever it is, it's something new by the sounds of things. So maybe I think that was the last point when Phil was like, yeah, maybe it's time to start talking about the past.
Why did you start filming them? Way back?
I grew up like from a very early age, like 8 or 9, wanting to be a filmmaker. And I just film everything. I had my dad's camera and I would just like be shooting everything, no matter what it is. So we was like student demonstrations. There was a lovely bit in the longer cut of the film where the band get caught up in a student demonstration by mistake. They came in to see us, and then the bailiffs came in and they kind of great. Yeah, anyway, there's some really great DVD extras. But I don't know. I just filmed everything, and I love music, and I grew up. My parents loved music, and I played music when I was growing up. So I felt like I've naturally gravitated towards them. And there are a lot of people. I mean, there's some people who are in bands, Tim and Chris. A lot of amazing bands at the time. It was like, I just thought all of them were going to go and take over the world. Or none of them. You know, I never really knew, and no one knew if it was going to be this band. They used to headline, one night it would be Coldplay, another night it would be Chris's band or Tim's band. It used to change. So it wasn't like any of it was a foregone conclusion. I just shot it all.
It's amazing as well, because you must be the most organised person in the world, because I mean I filmed stuff when I was at uni. I have no idea where the tapes are.
Right. Well, luckily, quite early on, I gave it all to Miller. And Miller, for people who don't know, is basically the band's kind of everything. So he started off, I think, doing the Pro Tools and doing organising keyboards. Then he wanted to be a filmmaker, so he gravitated towards filming everything. So a lot of the stuff that you see tonight was his. Sadly, he's not here. He's actually, I think he's with Chris tonight doing something else. But he put a lot of that stuff together, and he would just say, have you got anything? So I gave him everything. I gave him my tapes, my photos, anything. And I think he has like a little storage cupboard. Actually, no, it's probably more like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, a museum. And he just knows where everything is, and he's got this mind that just sees it all. So he gave it back to us when we started making the film.
And then how many hours are we talking?
It was over 1,000 hours worth of footage. Oh. So to be honest, yeah, if we'd sat down and diligently watched it all, I think we probably would still be watching it. But you know, I had Mark and Arturo, the editors on it, and then Hannah, who's our archive person, and the 2 producers, Fiona and Hannah, who just sat there and we diligently went through everything, and just got to the end, and it was just like, okay, we kind of figuring it out. And the good thing is, once we understood what the story was quite early on, it meant we could be quite ruthless, because like, this is a great anecdote, or this is great, but doesn't refer back to childhood friendship, so it doesn't fit.
Yeah, and it's really, what I think is wonderful as well is when you take the kind of the band out of it, and you look at the friendships, and friendships go through turmoil, and they go through good times and bad times, and I think that's one of the things as well that makes the film so powerful and true, is that it has light and shade, and you do kind of, you know, cover the harder times as well. And was that kind of quite easy to navigate through, and also to get the band to kind of comment on that now, looking back on specific points and things as well?
But they've always talked about it off camera in the past, and then, you know, we just talked about, I mean, I did say at certain points, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but
yeah, and
then start talking about some of the footage we had, or some of the good times, the bad times, and no one ever said, no, that's off, you know, we're not going to talk about that. And you know, there's areas, I mean, obviously each album is intensely personal for all of them, but I guess particularly for Chris, because the lyrics come from him, and he's under more scrutiny than the rest. But there was never any point, you know, I asked him about ghost stories, and everyone knows what that's about, and it was just, he just talked about it very honestly. And then, I suppose the only difficult thing maybe is now looking back, enough times past, I think Chris has a kind of a mentality that, look, yes, of course there've been bad times, but let's not spend a lot of time dwelling on them. So sometimes I'd have to talk to Phil or to Will or to whoever, just to say, okay, can you tell me about it? Because Chris he doesn't want to sound like a rock star complaining about his lot, even though all of us have had good times and bad times. There's no kind of shame to say you've had a bad time, but I think he's now in a place in his life where he's like, let's not dwell on the shit stuff. Yeah. Let's talk about the good stuff. So, you know, but luckily there was enough of that we could put in the film.
Were you in the room for some of those slightly uncomfortable moments, you know, when they were disagreeing about things and stuff as well? Were you?
Sure.
Ooh, what's that like? How do you kind of maintain? How do you not keep out of it, but
it's
become
awkward.
invisible? I guess
it's awkward, but you know, I've been in the same, but certainly early on. So some of the best footage in the film is Miller's, and I think what happened was in during X and Y, they asked him to. I might be getting this wrong, but I think they asked him to make a film about that album in particular. So he shot a lot of this really great stuff, and they just kept on shooting it. And the other good thing is the guy actually ended up filming a lot of this stuff, and he just leave a camera. So often if the camera's moving, it's probably Miller. And if the camera's just locked off and in the corner, then it's probably Guy during those tricky ups and downs. Yeah. And so there was no question them switching off, because that's what they were doing. And I think, and even when it's me filming, it's like, well, we're all part of the same thing. And I think there's enough trust to know that if something really terrible happened, something criminal, they probably, I wouldn't show it to the rest of the world. but they were pretty open about
Something
it.
criminal?
I don't know. I don't think that ever happened. I'm trying to rack my brain.
I love one of my favorite bits is when not to get any spoilers for anyone watching around the world, but there is one moment where they kind of punk Phil.
Yes,
and
right.
I really love that scene.
It's
and
so sweet.
It is really sweet. And what's really nice as well is that you get to know Phil a bit better,
sure.
which was that hard to convince him to let you do?
Yeah, Phil didn't want to be in the band. Well, I don't think anyone wanted to be in the film. So no one did.
Tough.
You know, least of all the band. But once I convinced the band to be in it, and then I think Phil was very much like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, I can be in it for a little bit, but you know, you haven't mentioned Dave. Dave is just as important to me, which of course he is. And you haven't mentioned Miles, and you haven't mentioned Debs, and you haven't mentioned all these other people. I could carry on talking for another hour about all the people we didn't put in, who are all crucial to their success. And it was tricky because Phil, you know, he doesn't like being filmed particularly. I'm exactly the same, but I had to kind of convince him that it was you know, inevitably he's part of that core unit, and he has been from the beginning. But yeah, and some of those bits, it's tricky because it can't be easy to see yourself, especially see yourself being punked. But he's very good humoured about it. I think he kind of got it.
When it came to the music for the film as well, obviously, you know, you have this wonderful tapestry of the band's music and, you know, all this fantastic access to when things are being created and stuff. But you also have a score on the film,
Right.
which is lovely as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it's tricky. We've had the same issue on a lot of. I've ended up doing quite a lot of films about music, not intentionally. I thought I'd be making more political films from the beginning. That's kind of, you know, my parents were refugees, and I kind of felt like I gravitated towards that kind of subject matter. But it's quite hard to finance a lot of the time, so I haven't done that much. But
hopefully this film, which I think might well be quite successful, may well help you do that.
Push the next one. Well, the problem is every time you finish a music film, then another offer comes that's so good that I like this one. And I was like, oh, okay. After doing Supersonic, I was like, okay, I'll do one more, and then that's it. But in terms of the music, so Rael Jones did the score, and he's here, so I can't be too nice about him, but he's a bit of a genius. He did the score for Supersonic, and hopefully would do many more with me. But it's a fine balance of, if you're being, you know, bombarded with so much music throughout, then what does the other bit do? And so he kind of took a lot of themes from the band. We decided quite early on, rather than having something completely different, to take certain themes, and sometimes you know what they are, sometimes you don't, but they're all inspired, or that he might have taken a stem from one of the recordings and just used that as the inspiration. But I think it's beautiful. You know, I think it was a nice way at the end when Chris leaps in the air, he threads together underneath, underneath O. He has like 3 or 4 different themes. So you have Viva La Vida coming in, but it's very subtle, and hopefully you'll feel it without sitting there kind of feeling like you clocked it in a kind of wink way.
What do you want people to feel when they come out the film?
I don't know. I feel like people are going to feel whatever they feel, but I think we're going through, you know, everyone I think can acknowledge we're going through some quite tough times at the moment globally, and there's some pretty shitty stuff going on, and there's like the rise of the right and all these things going on. So you can feel quite bleak about it, but you know, every time I hang out with this band and these people and all the people who surround them, everyone who's in this room, it gives me cause for hope. And I feel the same way whenever I go and see them live or I hear one of their albums. I feel like that's not an easy thing to do. I don't think there's anything kind of soft in the message that Chris says. I think it's hard to be unified at times like this, but they're very passionate about that. So I think this whole idea that we're one big band is a beautiful thing that we should all kind of take to heart, and we should all try and embody in your lives. But it's not an easy message. You know, I think there's nothing kind of simple about what they're talking about. I think it's a tough but important message of love.
It's wonderful to see, you know, these 4 or 5 individuals at the start kind of thing, and then, you know, seeing them now. But what you've done is to try and kind of track that, you know, their personalities, and it feels like they're still the same people now that they were then.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, you know, Phil says at one point, like, Chris has changed so much, and he has, of course, and he looks almost like a completely different person, and the way he carries himself, and he's very confident in a lot of ways. But I think it's interesting that kind of core vulnerability hasn't disappeared. And I remember, again, with lots of stuff that we cut from the film, but there's one bit, so first few weeks at uni, I remember him collaring me and taking me into one of the bathrooms. He grabbed a guitar, I barely knew him. He was like, come and listen to this, come and listen to this. He sat at the other end of the bathtub. We were fully clothed, but just in case anyone was wondering. And he sat at one end and played me this beautiful acoustic thing that I've never heard before or since. Probably junked it instantly afterwards, and he played it, and I just listened to it, and I sat there, and the room was silent afterwards. He's like, so what do you think? I was like, it's amazing, do you really write that? And he was like, it's fucking shit, I'm so talentless. And he had this thing afterwards, and then I spent a while reassuring him that it was good. And then when I spoke to him about that in one of the interviews we did, he was like, yeah, that was the old me, I've moved on. But then when we were in Bangkok, they have a recording studio that moves, like the crew managed to move it somehow from place to place and country to country, and it's backstage. They can rehearse or record whatever they want to do. And he presented this new song that he'd just come up with in the middle of just lining up upstairs. And then and he sat down, he played it, and they played it for a few times, and everyone embroidered it and added their own thing, and it just became this amazing thing. And I felt very privileged to see this song being born. And then it was showtime, and everyone looked at their watches and looked a little bit awkward. And then Chris was like, I knew it's fucking shit. Right, forget it. I'm sorry for wasting your time. So he hasn't.
Wow.
He's changed and he hasn't changed.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to describe them all.
Wow.
Who do you want to
it's
start with?
hard. It's hard to ask them that same question. They couldn't do it, or they struggled to do it. I mean, I think, yeah.
How do you describe Will?
Well, Will's here. Will is the loveliest person you will ever meet. Although I'm about to say that about all of them. And he is very...
He'd be saying that if you weren't here, by the way.
I would be saying that if you weren't here. He seems very, yeah, no worries, Will. What else did you want me to say? I can't remember. He's very strong. Like, he seems, I mean, you can see some of the stuff he's been through in the film. And I saw that all happening, and I think he got through it, and it's a fucking tough thing to have done. While it was all happening, it didn't implode. He just kind of kept going, and I think he is. Chris, I think, described him as the anchor of the band, and he seems to be that. He's kind of the voice of reason. He holds the thing together. It seems to me. And Guy's funny. He's amazing, but he's always wrong-footing you. He's literally a mystery. I don't know if he's a mystery to the rest of the band. He's in some ways a mystery to me because he's very enigmatic. Every time you meet him, he's got another project. He'd be telling you how he started this company, or he's doing this, or he's now flying, or he's building planes, or, or I asked him in that first interview, is it all right if I film you? Yeah, sure. He's like, I might have shot some stuff, actually. Do you want to see it? So a lot of that early footage at the beginning of the film, early in Head Full of Dreams, is all his. He just happened to decide he was going to shoot it all. Then he was going to throw it away, and then just like, you might as well use it in your film. And but he's amazing. But he is kind of a mystery. But he's very, very passionate. But it's weird. In some ways, he's the person I know the least. But I got to know him through making this film. I feel he was very sweet and open to me in a way that I've never had that connection with him before, particularly. But he's a lovely man. And then Johnny is so like they say, he's very sweet and humble, and he's like this very quiet genius who can just pick up an instrument and play it beautifully, and then look a little bit sheepish and walk off. And he's a very, you would never imagine he was in a band. If I was a guitarist, I'd be a nightmare. I'd be so fucking arrogant if I had his talent, But thank God he doesn't, he doesn't. I'm even more arrogant, thank you. And then Chris, I mean, he spent the whole film trying to get to the bottom of Chris. I think he's a lot of things, and he's, I think Johnny, when he says he's a genius, I think he's right. There's only a couple of people I think I've met in my life who are geniuses. I think he's one of them, and he's constantly wrong-footing you, but he's the kind of person who would turn up. We were talking about this today, actually. He would turn up at a party when we were students, walk in, he would take the party over for about half an hour. He would just he'd be the centre of attention. He'd get everyone dancing. Everyone would be very too cool for school. They'd get everyone dancing and jumping around and singing along. And then suddenly you turn around, where's he gone? And then you go and find him upstairs. He'd be there writing a new song for about 20 minutes. And then you turn around, he's gone. And I don't know. I'm sure he's changed a lot. And he's got a family and all these things. So he's changed and he's evolved. But I think in his essence, he's still that same amazing, sweet person. I love them all. And Phil is just unbelievable. I mean, he's the world's least likely manager. I know he's not the manager now, but he's like, I always imagined managers were like cigar chomping arseholes. They were like, fuck you. And
there are some of them.
I'm sure there are. Yeah, but Phil is probably, in those early years, it wasn't, it can't have been an easy thing to do, and he somehow kept the thing together, and he made it happen. And then I think the combination of him and Dave seems to be amazing, because it's like, Dave gets on with the business of things and he charts it. And Dave, if you ever speak to Dave, he's like the world's biggest Coldplay fan. Yeah. If he ever reads anything bad about the band, it's like he wants to murder someone. It's really sweet. It's like I start talking to him about it, and I put some of the criticisms. Like any big band gets criticism, and I was like, "What about this?" I'm like, "Yeah, fucking assholes! I can't believe they said that about my band." He lives and breathes it. And I think Phil is when you see him in there, he's just a very sweet man.
Those are really brilliant moments in the film as well, where kind of it's so brilliant that you've got this footage of the band kind of going, we're going to be the biggest band in the world, and all these kind of moments that you're kind of like, oh my God, you captured this has been captured, and it's absolutely amazing to kind of look at now where they are now. It's
It's very weird. It's very weird because I'd forgotten I'd shot most of that. So I'd be there with Mark, my editor, and we'd be sitting there, and he'd go, "Oh, look at this stuff," and I assumed it had come from somewhere. I thought it must have come from Chris or from Miller or someone. And I'd be like, "Oh, great! Who shot this? Where would he get this from?" I was like, "No, that's yours." And I'd spin the camera around, and there was a lot of footage of me, which I mean, it sounds kind of mean that I didn't put it in because I look terrible. But I think, to be fair, I feel like I was there. I was privileged to be an observer, but I'm not part of the story in the same way. You know, I think there's a lot of other people who deserve to be in the film more than I did. So, yeah, there's a longer cut. There's a 7-hour cut where you can see lots of embarrassing footage of me, I'm sure.
Is that going to come out at some point?
I imagine at some
the director's cut. It's got to, surely.
Yeah, maybe one day.
But I think if you hadn't been, you say you weren't part of it. You were a part of it, and I don't think the film would have been the film without you being part of it.
Well, I was lucky. You know, I was very lucky. You know, I could have been filming any band. So I just happened to be there, and I happened to really want to capture it in some way. It's unlikely when you see a lot of that footage again. It's like, and there were that moment where Chris says 4 years. That was part of a bigger sequence again in the longer film, where what's so unlikely about that is that it's the worst, it's the shittest gig they've ever done, probably anyone's ever done. It was appalling. They did a gig, they were supposed to be on at 7, I think they were supporting Space, and then it went to 8, and then 9, 10, 11, 12. Just me and Chris Williams, who were there as the roadies, filming it. At the end, I think they went on at 1 in the morning to me and Chris, and one drunk farmer. And for Chris to then turn around, Chris Martin to turn around and say 4 years' time we're going to be the biggest band. I mean, that's unique. That self-belief is unbelievable.
I've got to say thank you to everybody who submitted questions on Twitter and Facebook. There were so many, so I have to apologise that we're not going to get through them. Otherwise, we'd probably be here for the next 20 years. So I'm going to run through some of them. Thank you very much for submitting them all. Beth says, I love this. Is there anything that the band didn't want to include in the film that you could tell us about?
Well, there's a lot of Class A's and groupies backstage at a Coldplay gig. We weren't allowed to film that. No, I mean, I did wonder. You know, I had that moment where I was like, you know, we didn't self-censor while we were making it. So we're like, okay, we'll have the debate when we get to it. I mean, the same as on the Oasis film. I think what some people outside the film or music industry don't know is that, you know, you can't make a film about musicians without working with them, unless they're long gone or you don't put any of their music in, because you can't use any of it. And so inevitably you have to work with them, and you just trust that you can work together and they will be honest. And I think people sense that you can smell it when something's not real. And so I think we put in everything we wanted to put in, and then I thought there might be a bit of a debate about it, but actually it was never like that. I think the only thing they really were particularly conscious of was just the length. I think like there's a kind of thing within the Coldplay team, which is like, don't waste anyone's time. Like make an album that's 42 minutes long, not like some bloated double disc. Like just get to the point and get on with it. And there was stuff in there that I really loved, and no one ever said, and it wasn't controversial or anything like that. I was like, this is so lovely. It's kind of in the moment, and they were like, just get on with it. Like get on with it. That was the only note really, was just like just stop fucking about and get on with the story.
This is really good. I like this one. Nice. I think that's your name. I'd like to ask Matt how many Coldplay concerts he's attended in those 20 years.
Many.
And do you have a favourite Coldplay song?
Oh wow, many concerts. Even like in the last 2 years. I mean, we went to a lot of. I mean, not as many as the tour team who are here tonight who've been to every single one, but I've been to a lot. I've been to. Oh God, I can't even think to count. But yeah, I've been to.
You in triple figures?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would think about it. But yeah, I'm sure I am. Favorite song? I think like everyone, I think the songs change. My favorite songs change. Like this morning, our kids were dancing to Adventure of a Lifetime, so that's my favorite song. But a week ago, it was Careful Where You Stand, and a week before that, it was Fix You, and it will change every time. But I think probably. I mean, I normally, if anyone asked me that, I would say Politic. That's the one I always come back to. I just love that. That's the best for me. But you know, I'll say something else if you ask me at the end.
Different day, different emotion.
Yeah, for sure.
Michelle says, what was some surprising footage that you were astonished to see you had that you didn't remember existed? I guess the one you mentioned earlier, but was there
nearly all
anything
of
else?
it. Well, yeah, there was a lot of footage. There was footage, weirdly, there was footage of me. I walked into the edit one day and the whole team would gather around a monitor laughing. I was thinking, what's going on? What have they found? And it was me singing, filming myself for some reason in the bathroom mirror singing along to Oasis. So you should put that in the end credits. But yeah, it didn't really seem appropriate. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, certainly that footage of Chris doing the 4 years thing or any of that stuff, I'd forgotten I'd shot it. So I assumed someone else had filmed it.
This is from Mrs. Green, who says, which member of the band has changed the most over 20 years?
Well, I mean, you look at Guy. Guy basically hasn't changed. He got slightly younger, if anything.
He's
I don't know. I would say
cryogenically
Chris,
frozen.
probably superficially, but for the reasons we talked about,
Yeah.
I think he's still the same person underneath.
This is a nice one from Krista, who says, is there a particular filmmaker that's influenced you, and what's your favourite film?
Oh God, well, so many, but well, I'm not on this film or not on documentaries particularly, but the filmmaker who I, before I'd even met him, made me want to be a filmmaker was Michael Winterbottom, and I was lucky enough to get to work with him, for him, as a runner, and then as an editor, and as a cameraman, and yeah, all these different positions, then finally we directed films together. So yeah, certainly him. And I remember going to see his film Wonderland, which if anyone hasn't seen it, is still one of my favourite films of all time. And just seeing it, and it felt so real, and I was like, okay, I want to be able to do that one day, you know, which I never will. But there was something about it was just like, oh, that's it.
You're too hard on yourself. This is a great question. Did you get emotional at any point whilst editing your 20 years worth of footage, or when watching the finished film?
Well, I've got 2 young kids now, so I get emotional literally in a Tampax advert. I'm about to burst into tears right now. I don't know if that's exhaustion, but no, I get very emotional these days. I'm sure the older version of me wouldn't, but seeing, even when they send in the childhood photos, I mean, they're hilarious and they're just beautiful, and you suddenly see, oh God, that is Guy, and that, you know. So I think yeah, for sure. And seeing some of that early footage of the 4 of them, and some, you know, especially some of the tougher times, as was, yeah, for sure. And it was lovely of Will to, you know, to talk about some of the hard times, all those kind of things. I got quite emotional. I got emotional tonight watching it back, definitely.
Someone called I Ran Away, I don't think that's your real name, says, quite honestly, Matt, when you heard Coldplay's music for the first time ever, did you like it?
I can answer that with Will here. No, I did. You know, it's interesting because you have that thing where I think I grew up probably like a lot of people being quite like, I had to listen to music that other people weren't into, and so as soon as a band got big, it's like, well, fuck that, I'm moving on. So I remember going to see Radiohead quite early on because I was in Oxford, and going to see Supergrass quite early on, and then as soon as they got bigger, I kind of wobbled, and I'm not sure about this, you know, and I wonder now, you know, obviously I have the same sense of pride every time Coldplay come out with a new album. This is terrible. This is very sad. Every time they come up with a new album, a new song, I feel like the same sense of emotion and pride that when I see my daughters draw a picture or count, you know, I was like, wow, you guys are amazing. Whether I would feel that way if I was divorced and outside it, I don't know. I probably would be cynical and hateful of anyone who had any success, you know, like a lot of people out there, but I hope I would still love them.
This is a nice follow-on question from Rose Iris, who says, was it easier making a film for friends or more difficult because you are so close? Was it easy to make that film, or do you think, not comparing it to Supersonic, where you didn't have those relationships with the Gallagher brothers that you do with the band in this film?
It's tricky. It's a funny thing because on the one hand, you're arguably the perfect person to do it because you're there and you're part of that, and people will accept you and allow you to film stuff they wouldn't allow anyone else to film, and they don't get sick. Even if they're sick of me, they kind of tolerate me. You know, you can see the looks of like, fucking, he's here again, but they put up with it. And on the other hand, inevitably, you know, there's always a part of me, if there was a bit of friction or whatever, I'd be like, oh, should I be filming this in a way that maybe another filmmaker? And similarly, when we were making it, ultimately, it's like I wasn't going to try and make a stitch up. It's like, I love this band and I love these people, so I wanted to make a celebration. But I think hopefully we found a balance, you know, like we did with Supersonic. It's like you talk about the bad times, but ultimately it's, you know, they get through them all and they come together. And I think the way they talk about each other now is as warm or warmer than they've ever been. So you have to be truthful to the situation. You know, it'd be easy enough to make a stitch up. And similarly with Supersonic, we had so much footage, so much audio of the 2 brothers slagging each other off. We could have just done it all like that. But what surprised me was how warm they were about each other and how generous they were. So I felt like you just try and find a balance each time. But I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what someone else would have made of it if they'd made that film.
Are you still filming?
Well, they're on sabbatical for a year. I don't know if they'd ever want me back in their lives. They're probably so sick of me. Next time I come near a gig, security will be like, right, out. But yeah, I hope so. I'd love to keep on filming them if they're up for it in the future. They might want a break from me. But whatever they do next, I'd love to at least witness it, see it.
What do you, if you're just kind of with them and you're filming bits and bobs, what do you film on?
Oh, it's like a mixture of stuff. So, I mean, when we were shooting Viva La Vida, I hadn't seen the band for a while, and I've been off filming, doing my own stuff. And then Chris, this Phil rang me, and he was like, "Come in, like, you know, we all want you to come in." And so what should I bring? I've just got like a little camera. No. Bring in a film crew. So we had 3 16mm cameras, and we shot the shit out of it. And then we came out the other end, and they were like, "Oh, just put it on the shelf. Don't worry about it." So since then, we've tended to just shoot. We shoot on anything and everything. And Miller, I think this time we shot on Sony A7, and Marcus, who was also working with me, he shot on a 5D sometimes. Sometimes we had film cameras. We had 21 cameras at some of those gigs.
Wow.
They're shooting on everything from Super 8 to, you know, HD to, so anything we get our hands on. And the other thing is not a lot, but some of the footage in there is Chris's phone, for example, or Guy's camera. So, and I think the technology now is like, sometimes it's quite nice that you can walk in there, and as soon as you bring a camera out, I think Chris is particularly sensitive. It's not that someone's saying don't film.
Yeah.
They change, like the way you carry yourself. Is like as soon as someone sticks a camera, and the lovely thing is sometimes I end up shooting some of it on my phone or on someone else's phone because it's like you forget about it. That's all right.
Intrusive.
That's what we're used to now.
Yeah.
So I sometimes do that. It's quite nice.
So Will's here, so we know he's seen it.
Yes.
Have the rest of the band?
Sorry, Will.
any of the rest of them seen it?
I think well, Phil's seen it for sure. I think the only person who hasn't seen it now is Chris. For the reasons he kind of goes into at the beginning, I don't necessarily know if he'll ever see it. I think, but he trusted that the rest of the band were going to watch it. Phil watched it. I think his family watched it. Other people watched it kind of on his behalf, and I think he has a sense that. Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask him, but I think he has a sense that if he sees it, it's like he'll have to get involved, and then it will never happen.
What have the rest of the band said to you about it? The ones that you know have seen it.
I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, Will, but I think you said it was a masterpiece. I remember. He said it was the best film he'd ever seen. For anyone who's watching,
Oscar.
It is the best film of all time. Yeah, I heard the word Oscar. But I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Do you care what they think about it?
Do I care what they? No, I care what they think about it, and I suppose I care what the fans think of it. But I don't really mind. I mean, it's interesting. Like I think things like criticism, critics and so on. I think in the early days I'd get quite wound up about it, and I get all kind of tortured about it and read them, and it's like self-harm. And then I decided quite early on, I think it was on Road to Guantanamo, on Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. I'm not going to read them anymore because I only believe the ones that are shit, and the other ones I'm like, shut up. And so I don't read them anymore. But also, I think as you get older and you've got kids and you realise that the world doesn't revolve around you and your work, you get a bit more zen. I'm getting into quite a zen, happy time in my life. It was you were at it, you were on my birthday recently, and it's like, birthdays used to freak me out and used to wind me up, and I was worried that people weren't having a good time, or are they going to say, and now I was like, it's great, everything's fine. So I think that's just being really old.
Do you think the band have influenced that at all? Because
yeah, for sure.
There is something kind of quite special about their shows, in terms of you can go into that venue in the shittest mood ever, you had the worst day ever, and it does something to you when you come out the other side of it.
Definitely. So Golly, my wife, went to see it, and the first gig she ever went to of theirs, and came out and she was like crying, saying it's like a spiritual experience, and it really does feel that way to me. You might go in and you might go in as a cynic, you might be dragged there by a friend or by your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, and then you'll come out and you'll be wanting to get like Coldplay facial tattoos. It's that kind of thing. It's like it really does convert you. And I also think in terms of like,
you've not got one.
But I also think like I used to be quite cynical about certain things. Like I wouldn't listen to certain kind of music because it was popular.
Yeah.
And I think I learned through the band, particularly through Chris, it's like, it's all right to like anything. If it works for you, it works for you. It doesn't matter if it's ABBA and you're not supposed to like it. Like that's great. And similarly for films, I'm much more open to things now. And I think, certainly going to those gigs, you come out moved, and I'm sorry if, I'm sure, particularly in this country, I think people can be quite cynical.
Yeah. And
then you see the audiences in Sao Paulo, in Buenos Aires, or these places, or India, and people like within the first couple of chords of Head Full of Dreams as they came out, there were grown men, 30, 40-year-old men in tears, like clutching themselves. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So I don't, fuck reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And long may they continue as well, is what I like to add. congratulations on the film. I can't wait to see the director's cut 7-hour special.
20 hours of it.
And to you people who are watching around the world, enjoy watching the film tomorrow night if you are seeing it at cinema. If you haven't managed to get a ticket, Friday it's going to be streaming on Amazon Prime. Thank you for watching, Matt. Thank you for your
so
time
much.
and thank you for a
Edith.
wonderful film. Mat Whitecross, everyone.
Thank you.